327. $26.77. $57.11. Slow. Wow. 26.24. BSF 38 snack. BSF 32.38. Oh my God, BSF power. Holy shit. Wow, no 59 V8. $33.93. $33.94. 8906. 8901. And 2563. 28. Ooh, another F59 PH on this train. 562 again. 2637. 88907. And QNCL 3714. Holy crap. Holy shit. And 655. 394. 3054 and 3393. 703. 26 again, and 2854. And crap, my battery's on. $31.19. Holy crap, that's big. 29.7. Mid DPU. Wow. 2681. 8815. And 2419. 2574. 5461. Okay, I kind of got mixed up there. 3038. And 3036. And 3068. 246. 245. It's the first time I now have a Canada 150 locomotive on camera. Via 919 is here posing, along with Canada 150 Unit 914. And yes, I am reelfing at the Toronto Go and V yard. So got some Canada 150 equipment over there, including some coaches. Yeah. 5433. Leading. At 2008. Whoa, at QNC. Oh my God. Wow. Smoke. 641. 3037. At 2855. 16, along with a rebuilt F40 6414, which is mostly one of the Canada 150 locomotives. And yeah, this is the first locomotive to get a Canada 150. Whoa! A rebuilt. Wow, an F40 is on this cool move. Woo! It's a Canada 150 over there. Oh, I see it go over there.
That's a newer engine.
$31.18. 662 at 2018. Yep, an XUP on this. $50.23 at 62.57. $69.08.
Pacific!